Hello, this is a video walkthrough of the second scenario in the Kaplan exam kit for spreadsheets, applicable for exams September 21. It is scenario 2 and it is called Bettabake. Right, once again, I hope you've got the instructions in front of you. I don't want to be flicking around too much, so here we go. Right, we've got 4 cakes, the whirl, splash, butter bun and choco. We've been given ingredient requirements for each product. The following information is also available with regards to costs. The production manager wants you to prepare a spreadsheet that will help her with her budgets. So task 1, on the budget data worksheet in cells D10 to D14, insert a formula to calculate the cost per unit in a pack. Make sure the cells are formatted to currency and 4 decimal places. Right, so I'm going to go equals total cost of a pack, divide by the units in a pack. And then I'm just going to copy that down for all. It wants it to 4 decimal places. So I'm going to go right click, format cells, currency we want, and just change that to 4 decimal places. Using the ingredients, so now on the cost per cake worksheet, so I'm in here. Using the ingredients and the cost per unit data on the budget data worksheet, so the ingredients and the cost per unit data, use formulas in cells B2 to F5 to calculate the total cost of each ingredient for each cake. Right, so eggs in the whirl. Right, so I'm trying to work out the total cost of the ingredients. So I want to go equals. Right, so I need 1 egg times that, I think, cost per unit in a pack. All right, so then if I copy that down, has that done the right thing? So budget data B3 times D11, let's just check that. So B3 times B11, so it hasn't done the right thing because of course it's going down here. So I need to make cost per unit in a pack for eggs my D9. I have to make that, sorry, wait a minute, D10 it should be. So D10, that needs to be an absolute cell reference. So function F4 or just F4 on the desktops at college. And I'm going to copy that down. That looks a bit better, right? Because I've kept referencing to that same cell, D10. Right, cost per cake for flour. So equals, I need 50 grams times cost per unit in a pack for flour. And I want my D11 to be fixed, so I'm going to F4 that, put the absolute in, and then I'm going to copy that down. Right, sugar equals how much sugar times the cost for the sugar, F4 it, copy it down. Butter is going to be 28 grams times butter, which I want to stick with. And the last one is cream. Right, I think that's it. So then it says use a function to calculate the total cost per cake. So this is a nice simple function. It's the sum function. So probably the easiest way to do this that I know of is to highlight across there, including the gap, and then just press that auto sum button. And if we just click on that to see what it's done, you can see the formula there. It is equals sum, open bracket, B2 to F2. Right, that's an efficient function to add up all those numbers. Right, so then I'm just going to copy that down so it does it for all of them. So that's a function to calculate the total cost per cake. Format all sales as currency pounds to 3 decimal places. It says all sales, so I'm going to do the whole sheet. Right click, format cells, currency, 3 decimal places. Show formulas and auto-fit column widths. So show formulas, we can go to formulas, view formulas. I've got a little shortcut key, and then you can make the column widths appropriate. We did that in the last one, so I'm not going to dwell on that. Page orientation to landscape, save your work. Right, again, we did that on the last one, so I'm not going to dwell on that. Task 2. On the budget worksheet, insert the quantities in B2 to B5 as follows. So we've got 35 whirls, 9 splash, 15 butter bun, and 24 choco. That's easy. In cells C2 to G5, that's the rest of it, do a formula that calculates the quantity of ingredients required to manufacture the number of cakes in column B. Right, this will use the budget data worksheet. Right, so my eggs, so I need 35 eggs. So I want to make 35, sorry. So I'm going to times that by the number of eggs required. Right, so yes, I've done B2, my number of cakes times the number of eggs per cake. So then for the splash, if I just copy this down, let's see what happens. Oh, sorry. If I just drag this down, let's see what happens. Does it work? So for the splash, it should be the number of cakes, so 9, times, it's doing budget data B3. Yep. And then the next one, the butter bun is saying, right, I'm doing 15 B4 times the budget data for B4. That looks reasonable, right? So I'm happy that that's doing the right thing. So then when I come to flour, I don't really sort of want to keep repeating myself too much. Is there any sort of shortcut here? I don't know if there is. So obviously if I pull this across to flour, it's doing C2 So that's not right. I want it to go back to B2. And then it's timesing it by the budget data in C2. So that is correct, because I want the budget data of the well is the amount of flour. So the problem is that I want this to stick at B2, right? So if I was to change that to be an absolute cell formula, so if I do function F4, I'll do the same on all of these, make these into absolute cell references. I should then be able to drag it across and it'll do what I want it to do. So flour, let's just check and see if that's worked. So B2, so 35 cakes times 50 grams of flour. So that's looking good. So let's just drag it down here and see if it's worked. Let's just test Choco. So we're saying B2 here, number of cakes, times 55 grams. Right, looking good. So then what happens if we pull this across this way in a block? Is again, it should work. So let's just check one at random. So let's just check this one. So B2, so, right, there is the problem. So it's saying B2, when actually we want B2, B3, B4, B5. So what's gone wrong there? B2. Oh, look, when I've dragged that down, right, it hasn't changed that number. So wait a minute. So we need to actually drag it from here instead. So can you see this checking process that I'm going through? Making sure it's doing what I'm expecting it to do. This is good practice. This is what I would do if I was in the exam myself. So let's just check this one now. So it's then B4, which is number of cakes there, times the budgeted data for E4. So I want butter bun, butter, yeah, there we go. So I'm pretty happy that that's done what I wanted it to do now. So let's go back to the instructions. Where were we up to? Was that was part E. In cells C7 to G7, calculate the purchase quantities for each ingredient. No, I'm looking at the wrong bit, aren't I? Sorry. In cells C, I've done part B, sorry. In cells C2 to G5, do the formula. Right, we've done that bit, that's part B. C, use a function to calculate the totals. In C6 to G6. So I just want totals here. So again, I'm going to use my speed sum or auto sum. And then once I've got one in there, I can just drag it across and it should do the same thing for all of the different columns. Right, part D, format the values in the table to number with no decimal places. Right, so we can probably just do all of them here. So change this to number. That's got decimal places, but I can use these in and out buttons. So look, decrease decimal, that will do the job. Number with no decimal places. There are different ways of doing things. Right, could have gone format cells and clicked no decimal places in there. In cells C7 to G7, calculate the purchase quantities for each ingredient. Eggs are purchased in boxes of 360. Right, let's deal with the eggs first then. Right, so I need a total of 103 eggs, and they come in boxes of 360. So clearly one box is going to be ample, but I can't just type in number one. So I'm going to go equals the total I need, divide by 360. Now that's a bit stupid. It's saying I need 0. So if we read on in task E, it says use a formula that will round the purchase quantity up to the nearest whole box or kilogram. So we're dealing with whole boxes here. We want it to end up saying 1 box. So there's something called a round up function. So I'm going to apply it to this number that I've already got in here. So I'm applying a function to a formula. Now I'm not going to use the FX button because I've already got the number in here. So I'm going to go round up, rounds a number up away from 0. It doesn't do normal rounding, it rounds up, which is what we want. It's no good saying it's closer to 0 boxes of eggs and we don't buy any. We need to buy a box of eggs, we need some. So round up, open bracket, that's the number that I want to apply to. As with all functions, put a comma afterwards, and we're rounding up to the nearest whole number, so we want 0 decimal places. Close bracket. Now it's going to tell me I need to buy 1 box of eggs, which seems sensible. Right, all the other ingredients are purchased by the kilogram. So we're in grams at the moment. So equals, I need that many grams. So if I just divide that by 1,000, that will tell me how many packs, and that's going to work for all of them. So I can drag that bit. Oh no, hang on, before I do that, let's do the round up. So round up, open bracket, comma after the number, 0 for the number of digits, close the bracket. And then that should be the same for all the others because they're all in grams. So I can drag that across and it's telling me how many packs I need of each of these. So you can see it makes sense, doesn't it? If I need over 4,000 grams, I need to buy 5 kilogram boxes. If I need 2,500, I need to buy 3 kilogram boxes, and so on. Even if it's only just over 2,000, I need to buy 3 boxes. So that's the use of the round up function. Right, save the workbook. Task 3. On the budget worksheet, insert the following selling prices into cells C14 to C17. So I'm just copying 0.9, the splash 1.2, but why is it doing that? 1.10, 1.5. So at this point I'm thinking, oh no, what's happening? Right, so problem is presumably because I set the whole page to do, you know, when it told me to do them to the nearest pound, I did it up here. So let me just undo that. So I've realized that that's causing a problem. So increase the decimals again to 2 decimal places. You can see that's fixed down here. And then I am just going to redo that bit, back down to the nearest whole number. Okay. Right, so I've typed in those figures that it told me. Part B, use a VLOOKUP to look up the cost price from the cost per cake worksheet. Right, and I'm going to put this into the B column. Right, so we've done VLOOKUP on the first scenario. So let's use our FX for this. It works quite well for VLOOKUP. So I want to look up the name of the product. I want to look it up. Where am I looking it up? The cost price. Yeah, so I want to look it up here. So that's my data. Let's just move that down out of the way. So I'm looking it up here. Okay, so I can click to say that's where I want the computer to look things up. And then I've got to tell it, so if it's looking up the whirl, which is column 1, which column number do I want it to give me the answer? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So the total cost is in column 7. And then I want to tell it it's false here because look down here, true is a close match, false is an exact match. I want it to look up that exact word. All right, so I'm going to say OK to that. So it brought me the cost price of £1.23. Right, so I can then, well, I can't quite yet copy it down because, of course, at the moment, my table array is not an absolute cell reference. So I'm just going to put the dollars in, and yeah, that will mean that it will always look at the same table. So if I copy that down now, it should work. So again, let's just check one, see if it's worked. So the butter bun is selling price £1.10, cost price £1.28. Yep, so rounded to 2 decimal places. It was 1.276 there. Now it's £1.28 because I've rounded it to 2 decimal places. So that's looking like it's working. Right, use a function in cells D14 to D17 to calculate profit that rounds the answer to 2 decimal places. Right, so round the answer. It's telling me to use a function, so I can't just format the cells because a function is a function. So probably the best function to use here will just be round. We don't want to round up, we just want to do a normal round this time. So let's see what we've got there. Round. Rounds a number to a specified number of digits. Right, so I'm going to use this one. So the number that I want to round is going to be the selling price subtract the cost price. And I want to do it to 2 decimal places. In there and say OK. And then I should be able to copy that down. All right, so technically, because it said use a function, I've used round. I could alternatively, probably if I'd just done it without the round bit, it would have come out the same because I've already formatted this to 2 decimal places using the decimal place indents. Right, next one. Use conditional formatting to turn any cells in the profit column red where a product is loss-making. Right, so we can see the whirl and the butter bun are both loss-making, so we would expect those to turn red. So, you know, we could cheat, use our fill, just turn them red, but that's not using conditional formatting. So to use conditional formatting, you highlight the range of cells that you want it to apply to. We're in the Home tab, and here's the conditional formatting. So there's various rules that you can play around with, but here I want anything with a minus number to go red. So probably this is going to be my best bet. Highlight the rule. So if it's less than 0, turn it red. So if there's something red going on here, that will do. Right? You can custom. So if it tells you something to do something that isn't there, where are we here? You can custom that using the custom format. But I'm just going to run with that light red filled with dark red. That seems reasonable to me to meet the requirements. Right, auto fit landscape save. I'm not going to do that, it gets a bit repetitive. Right, task 4. So on the whirl worksheet, your manager wants to calculate the future possible sales amounts for the whirl. So on the whirl worksheet, produce a scatter graph for weeks 1 to 10 with a line of best fit showing the trend on the sales. Right, so I want a graph. I want my headings because I want it to be labelled appropriately, and I want to do it for weeks 1 to 10. Right, so I'm going to go insert, and we can see all our charts here. Right, so recommended charts. Let me just, can't see a scatter as one of the options. Oh, there we go. Insert a scatter. If it wasn't one of those, you could go to recommended, and then you can click on all charts and you get absolutely all the options. Right, so it's that one, XY scatter, but more quickly, I can see it's there. Right, so I just want to plot the dots. So number of wells sold, weeks 1 to 10. So we've got our weeks along there, the number sold up there. So if we wanted to label the axis, it hasn't told us that, but we could put axis titles in and we can type in what we want. All right, so you can play around with that plus and sort of update accordingly. But we do have to put in a trend line. So plus trend line, there's some options, but don't have to be too flash. There we go. A linear trend line, that looks about right to me. Okay, and you can move your chart around. You can make it bigger and smaller by dragging from the corners, or you can make it long and thin, etc., etc. All right, you can play around with that a little bit if you want to. Part B, use the forecast function to predict the sales for weeks 11 and 12. So you can see we've got weeks 1 to 10 where we know the actual data. So it's called to extrapolate or forecast, what's going to happen in week 11 and 12 if the trend continues, right? So it's telling us to use a forecast function. So equals, I'll tell you what, let's not do that. Let's use the function button up here. So there's forecast. Right, so X is the data point that you want to predict. So I want to predict for week 11. So cell A12. Right, the known Y's, the dependent array or range of numeric data. Right, so this is what we already know. The X's is the weeks that is based on. Right, so then we say, okay. Now, if you couldn't remember that, just try it. The first time I did this recently, I got it around the wrong way, and the data didn't look right. So I just went back and swapped it round, right? So a lot of this isn't memorising how to use things. It's using your initiative, looking to see if things look reasonable, checking if it's worked the way you think it's going to work, all right? So that does look about right to me. Except it's obviously got decimal places. It does say here, round the answers down to the nearest whole cake. Right, so let's apply the round down formula to what we've got here. So I can't really use the FX very easily because I've already got everything else in there. So I'm going to go to just after the equal sign, round down, open brackets. So all of that is the number that I want to round down. So I come to the end of all of that and put my comma in. And then I tell it I don't want any decimal places. So I put a 0. Close brackets, enter. And then hopefully if we drag that down, so has it done what we want it to do? So our first forecast was looking up A12 and it was using B2 to B11, A2 to A11. Now I'm suspecting this is going to go wrong because I haven't used absolute cell references, right? And indeed it has. So let's go back. So all of this I don't want an absolute cell reference on the A12 because I do want that one to come down, but all of that bit that I've highlighted, I actually want to be absolute cell reference. So I need to put the dollar signs in. So let's try it again. So delete that one that I just dragged down. Drag it down again. It has given me the same answer, but you can see I'm now referring to the correct array of data, and that looks sensible. If I look at that number of wells sold, it's a gradually increasing trend. That looks sensible as a forecast. Right, task 5. On the budget worksheet, use a what if analysis to calculate what the selling price would need to be for the butter bun to make a total profit of £3. Right, so the butter bun at the moment making, these are just profits per unit. So if it's asking me about a total profit, it hasn't told me to do this, but we're going to need to know what the total profit is. So if this is the profit for a single unit, multiply that by the number of cakes to give us our total profits. Right, so at the moment the butter bun is making minus £2.70 because it's minus 18p times by the 15. I want that to be 3. I want to get to a total profit of £3. And it tells us here, so we're going to use what if analysis, and it says in part B, before you click OK, take a screenshot and paste it into a new tab called screen. Oops, sorry, wrong place. Right click, rename. I'll just call that screen. Okay. Right, so what if analysis? I think this is quite clever. So data, what if analysis, we use this thing called goal seek. Right, it's really simple. Watch and see what you think. So we are setting this cell, right? We want the cell highlighted there to not be minus £2.70, but to be £3. And we want that to happen. If we look at the instructions, what does the selling price have to be? So that figure at the moment is £1.10. What does that have to be to make that happen? Now, don't forget, it told me to do a screenshot. So I'm just going to press my print screen button now. Right, do I have to press control print on this one? I think it's just print screen on the college computers. Right, now it won't let me print that yet. It won't let me come away from not pressing OK. So I'm going to press OK. And as if by magic, I've now got that total profit of £3, which because I've got 15 items, that's 20p profit per unit. And you can see that the selling price would have to change. So what was it before? It was £1.10. It would have to go up to £1.48 to make that happen. All right, so I'm happy at that. Now I'm hoping that I did my screenshot correctly. So I go to my new page where it says screen. Remember, I press screen print before print screen even, before I press the OK button. And now if I go right click, paste, it prints my screen print in here as required. And that's the end of scenario 2.